Good morning. There's something serene about a golf course first thing in the morning. As the sun's just coming up, the air is relatively clear and wonderful. It's a beautiful blue sky up there, not hazy at all. I hope everybody's having a wonderful weekend. I know I sure am. I crashed pretty hard last night, or actually yesterday afternoon. I was just done. It was a long week. A lot of stress. A lot of stress. So after I did the audit, my wife and I went out, had Willie's Burgers in Old Sac. They were all right. I had the chili, the Slammer C. It's a Slammer. It's a chili cheeseburger, basically. One patty, one piece of cheese. Trying to watch my girlish figure, trying not to order the biggest, baddest possible meal. You know what I mean? Food is way too plentiful in America. Capitalism has failed. So today, I would like to talk about how to read cases and when to try to distinguish them and when not. I've fallen into this myself a few times, so it's easy to do and I don't fault anybody for it. But there are cases out there where you are looking at the case not necessarily for the fact pattern, for the intricacies of the fact pattern, but you're looking at it for the rule, the clearly stated rule that's in the case. For example, Adderley v. Florida. The clearly stated rule in Adderley v. Florida is that the state can preserve the property in its control for the intended business of that particular government entity. And from that, we get the non-public forum analysis. We get the, I believe it was stated in Adderley, it might have been stated in a subsequent case, but you get the rule that in a non-public forum, the government can restrict speech as long as it's content neutral and it's reasonable. That's it. That's all it has to be. It's content neutral and reasonable, which means the government almost always wins. Now, if you're going to try to distinguish your particular fact pattern from Adderley v. Florida, you have to remember that the fact pattern of Adderley v. Florida has been applied to military bases. It's been applied to courts. It's been applied to airports. It's been applied to post office boxes. Adderley v. Florida was applied to post office boxes. It's been applied to a program where you can apply to be like a teachers union, if I remember correctly. Something about a teachers union. So you're looking at Adderley v. Florida for the test in it, not for the fact pattern. Now there are other fact patterns out there that, or other cases out there that are very much more, you're looking at them for the fact pattern. You're trying to say that my facts are more like this case or my facts are more like that case. You won't see that as much from Supreme Court decisions because, again, you're going to be looking at those for the rule, for how to apply the rule, what rule to apply. So, yes, it's like if you're kind of at the lower court level, if you're in the district court and you're trying to convince, you know the rule because the rule's generally pretty clearly stated, it's pretty obvious. And so you know that's the rule that the court's going to apply. Then you could try to look for various cases where that rule has been applied, and you can look at the fact patterns of those cases, and you can say, well, this fact pattern more closely aligns with my fact pattern, and so you should rule based on how the court ruled in this case. So that's kind of the difference between the two sorts of things, where one, you're looking at the facts and you're trying to say that my case is very similar to these facts, as opposed to saying that my case should or should not use this particular rule. I'm bringing this up because California Guardian said in a comment, and he makes good comments every once in a while. Can't let him get too big of a head. But he said that the courts have ruled that you can swear because of Cohen v. California. Now, they didn't. They did and they didn't. So what the government was looking at there was a disturbing the peace statute, California Penal Code 415. And what they were looking at was, can the government make a content restriction about speech? And if the government is going to make a content restriction about speech, then you apply the strict scrutiny analysis. Strict scrutiny analysis means the government has to have a compelling interest, and the law, the rule, has to be narrowly tailored to achieve that compelling government interest, and there has to be no less restrictive alternatives. And essentially the government's going to lose. So if the government just says outright, you can't swear, you can't say fuck. If the government says that, then the government is probably going to lose, because there's no real compelling interest for that. Good morning. No, relax. Relax. Everybody's relaxed. Awesome. We're all relaxed. So the government can't just say, you can't say fuck. But there are other ways the government can restrict your right to say fuck. One way is in the new and improved California 415, is if you're using it as fighting words, as incitement to violence. So if you walk up to a police officer and you say, fuck you, donut eater, that may be incitement to violence. And this is where a bit of the arbitrary nature of the determination comes in, because the judge is going to figure out from his perspective, because he's going to think he's a reasonable person, or maybe it's going to be the, if it's in front of a jury, then maybe the jury is going to do it, but they're going to figure out if it's reasonable for someone just to haul off and slug you because they said to you, fuck off, donut eater. I'm not a big fan of the fighting words, the incitement to violence exception. If they do get that, if they do narrow it down to fighting words are unprotected speech. There's no First Amendment protection on fighting words, just like there's no First Amendment protection on child pornography. There just is none. You don't have a First Amendment protected right to walk up to a cop and say, fuck you, donut eater, if that's determined to be fighting words. Now, if it's not determined to be fighting words, like if the cop is driving by and there's no chance of he'd have to stop, pull over, get out of his vehicle and walk back, and he's got, 10 to 20 seconds to think about it, well, then it's probably not fighting word. But again, we're into the arbitrary kind of, well, is it, isn't it? It's a balancing test, etc. So in that instance, the government may be able to say you can't use the word fuck. Where else can the government say that maybe you can't use the word fuck? Well, if it's a public forum, then maybe there's time, place, and manner restrictions. Let's say, for example, that there is a public park. Oh, gosh golly, that's a public forum, right? And let's say you're there in the hours that the public park is open to the public, so gravy. You're well within a traditional public forum. Now let's say that this particular park has rules that you can't use obscene language, like the F word, within earshot of a child. For example, could the government make that rule? And the answer to that is maybe, just maybe. The court would look at the balancing test. In a traditional public forum, it's a medium kind of scrutiny test. They have to have a significant or important interest, and that significant or important interest would be to protect kids from hearing obscenity. And the rule would have to be narrowly tailored to achieve that significant government interest. And if you don't want to hear if you don't want kids hearing obscenities, then that's pretty narrowly tailored to say that you can't scream obscenities within earshot of a kid. And, it leaves ample alternative methods of communication open. You can have a sign that says, "fuck you," on it. Because remember, signs don't make noises, and so it would be out of earshot of the kids. Now, you see how different that is than saying that the Supreme Court ruled that the government can't prohibit swear words. It's a whole different story, which is, I don't want you up there, get off their lawn. Which is why I should be more cautious when people are asking me questions. In Discord, Chris the Swede asked me about trespass, and I gave him a fairly bland. He wanted bright line rules, and there aren't any bright line rules on trespass. If a child can trespass you from your property, or if a child can trespass someone from that child's parents' property, can an employee trespass someone from the employer's property if they're not like the manager? And the answer to that question is maybe. Typically, in trespass laws, the person with the greatest right of possession, with a greater right of possession, can trespass someone with a lesser right of possession. Now, the right of possession in the case of like a corporation or a government agency or something like that would belong to the corporation or the government agency. And you'd have to delve down through agency laws to figure out if the employee had actual authority or apparent authority to trespass someone from that government agency property. And in order to figure out which one or both of those you would need, you'd have to look at the trespassing statute. So in Texas, you just need apparent authority to trespass someone. So very likely that a government employee would be able to trespass you from property. So there's lots of little distinctions that need to be made when you're looking at these laws. It's not cut and dry. Most things, like the rules, are pretty cut and dry. Like the forum analysis is pretty cut and dry. Questions may arise as to whether or not a particular place is a particular kind of forum, like a Facebook page. What kind of forum is it? Is it a non-public forum if a government entity is using it just for their speech? Oh, it's poop time. Yes, the look of shame. I'm gonna have to clean this up. And anyway, it was nice talking to you. It's a lovely morning. Have a great day.